First time I was on the Opry was in 1966, and I was absolutely petrified. I'd had one record out which had not.
When we think of country music legends, we imagine heartfelt lyrics, big hats, and even bigger hearts. But what happens when the music stops and the lawyers take over? The final wishes of some of country music's biggest stars have left fans and even family members stunned. Here are the weirdest and most jaw-dropping details ever found in the wills of country music icons. Tammy Wynette. Tammy Wynette, renowned as the First Lady of country music, possessed a voice that resonated deeply within the heart of America. Her 1968 classic, Stand By Your Man, continues to be celebrated as one of the most legendary country songs ever. However, in the years after her passing, it wasn't her remarkable music that captured the spotlight. It was the enigmatic and troubling controversy regarding her last wishes, her will, and the choice to forgo an autopsy. Tammy Wynette, originally named Virginia Wynette Pugh, was born in Mississippi in 1942 and emerged from modest beginnings to achieve worldwide fame. Her music frequently touched on themes of heartbreak, loyalty, and resilience, experiences she personally endured throughout her life. Over the years, she went through 5 marriages, confronted health issues and addiction, and endured significant personal suffering, all while establishing one of the most impactful careers in the history of country music. By the time she passed away in 1998, she had achieved 20 #1 hits and had solidified her status as a cultural icon. Upal Bird was the first husband of Tammy Wynette. They tied the knot in 1960 when Tammy was merely 17 years old and residing in Mississippi. Upal worked in construction, and their union was characterized by financial hardships and instability. Throughout their marriage, Tammy welcomed 3 daughters: Gwendolyn Lee Bird, who was born in 1961, Jacqueline Faye Bird, born in 1962, and Tina Denise Bird, who arrived in 1965. However, the marriage was short-lived, and Tammy ultimately decided to leave Upal to chase her dreams in music, relocating to Nashville with her daughters. After parting ways with Upal, Tammy entered into a marriage with Don Chappell, a songwriter and radio personality. This union did not yield any children and was fraught with difficulties from the outset. It came to an abrupt end following a chaotic incident that stemmed from Tammy's increasing closeness to fellow country music star George Jones, resulting in a public fallout and the annulment of their marriage. Tammy's third husband was none other than George Jones, a legendary figure in country music and her most renowned partner. They married in 1969 and quickly became known as the first couple of country music. Their relationship was filled with passion, but also volatility, marred by Jones's battle with alcoholism and the overwhelming pressures of fame. In 1970, Tammy gave birth to her 4th and final child, Tamala Georgette Jones, who is professionally known as Georgette Jones. Following in her parents' footsteps, Georgette pursued a career in country music and has established herself as a public figure in her own right. After her divorce from George Jones in 1975, Tammy had a brief marriage to Michael Tomlin, a real estate executive. This marriage lasted only about 44 days and did not produce any children. It is often regarded as one of the more obscure episodes in her personal history. Her 5th and last husband, George Ritchie, served not only as her partner, but also as her manager and collaborator. They tied the knot in 1978 and stayed together until her passing. While many admired Ritchie's commitment to Tammy, there were others, including some of her daughters from earlier marriages, who remained doubtful about the relationship and Ritchie's role in her personal and financial affairs. Tammy Wynette passed away on April 6, 1998, at the age of 55. George Ritchie, her husband, revealed that she died peacefully in her sleep at their home in Nashville after expressing discomfort the previous day. He mentioned that when he checked on her the next morning, she was unresponsive. A local doctor arrived and declared her dead at the scene. What made this situation particularly striking was the absence of an autopsy, despite Tammy's well-known history of chronic health issues, which included painful intestinal problems, numerous hospital visits, and a reported reliance on prescription medicines. Ritchie explained that he had spoken with her physician, who attributed her passing to a blood clot in her lung, known as a pulmonary embolism. The doctor completed the death certificate without conducting any further examination. This choice, however, raised eyebrows among many, particularly Tammy's daughters. Following Tammy's passing, her will disclosed that the majority of her estate was to be inherited by George Ritchie. Although her daughters were not entirely left out, they were not the main beneficiaries. This revelation was unexpected yet not entirely rare. However, when combined with the absence of an autopsy and her intricate medical background, it intensified an already existing controversy. Tammy's daughters, especially Georgette Jones, were profoundly unsettled by the circumstances surrounding their mother's death. They asserted that they were not informed in a timely manner about her demise, and by the time they arrived, decisions concerning her remains had already been finalized. The will, curiously mute on Tammy's preferences for funeral arrangements or autopsy protocols, left her daughters feeling marginalized and distrustful. In 1999, just a year after the passing of Tammy Wynette, her daughters initiated a wrongful death lawsuit against George Ritchie and her doctor, Dr. Wallace Marsh. They claimed that their mother had been over-medicated and that both men had shown negligence in her treatment. One of the most remarkable events during the lawsuit was their request and subsequent approval to exhume Tammy Wynette's body from her burial site in Nashville. The exhumation took place discreetly, with little public awareness. A comprehensive autopsy was finally carried out in 1999. The findings revealed the presence of multiple prescription medications in her system, including pain relievers, anti-anxiety medicine, and a muscle relaxant. Although the coroner could not conclusively determine if the medication levels played a role in her death, the autopsy raised doubts about the initial diagnosis of a pulmonary embolism and opened the door for more inquiries. Ultimately, however, the lawsuit was dismissed. There was no conclusive evidence of foul play, and despite the lingering questions, the courts found no one directly accountable for her death. As the news of the lawsuit and the autopsy findings circulated, both fans and tabloids eagerly sought to piece together the story. Some speculated that George Ritchie might have restricted Tammy's access to necessary medical treatment. Others hinted at possible financial incentives behind the absence of an autopsy, particularly since Ritchie was poised to inherit the majority of Tammy's estate and had power of attorney during her final days. Meanwhile, there were those who contended that Wynette's long-standing reliance on pain medication, reportedly delivered via a surgically implanted pain pump, could have obscured symptoms or even contributed to her untimely passing. A plethora of conspiracy theories emerged, ranging from allegations of medical malpractice to claims of deliberate neglect. In spite of these assertions, no criminal charges were ever brought forth, and George Ritchie maintained his innocence until his passing in 2010. But Tammy wasn't the only country icon whose death raised more questions than answers. Other stars left behind wills so puzzling they seemed ripped from a courtroom drama rather than the quiet end of a musical legacy. Hank Williams. Hank Williams was a pioneering force in country music whose life was cut tragically short at age 29. Known for classics like Your Cheatin' Heart and Hey Good Lookin', he melded blues, gospel, and folk into a sound that reinvented the genre. On January 1st, 1953, New Year's Day, Williams passed away in the backseat of his Cadillac while heading to a performance for the occasion, probably due to a mix of heart failure and substance abuse. Hank Williams tied the knot with Audrey Mae Shepherd on December 15, 1937. Their relationship was marked by ups and downs. They divorced in 1944, remarried in 1946, and ultimately separated for good in May 1952. Throughout this chaotic union, Audrey welcomed their only son, Randall Hank Williams, on May 26, 1949. After their final separation, Randall was primarily raised by his mother, and he later adopted the stage name Hank Williams Jr. He followed in his father's musical footsteps and became a country star in his own right. At the time of Hank's passing, Randall was just a toddler, with Audrey serving as the main guardian for both her son and his early inheritance. In the autumn of 1952, Hank tied the knot with performer Billie Jean Jones on October 18, merely 10 weeks prior to his passing. Their marriage was short-lived and filled with conflicts. Williams' health was deteriorating, and his struggles with addiction were at their peak. Following his death, Billie Jean claimed she was expecting Hank's child, seeking acknowledgement and inheritance rights. However, no medical confirmation of the pregnancy was ever provided, and she did not give birth to any child. Ultimately, the courts dismissed her claims, determining that there was no evidence to support the existence of an unborn heir of Williams from this union. Nevertheless, her claim initiated the first hints of posthumous inheritance disputes. Over a decade later, in 1968, an astonishing revelation emerged when Bobby Jett, a family acquaintance from Montgomery, Alabama, stepped forward to declare that she had been pregnant with Hank's child at the time of his passing. Bobby's daughter, Catherine Jett Williams, entered the world on May 6, 1953, almost 5 months after Williams had died. Jett was raised under the belief that Hank was her father, yet without any legal acknowledgement, she had no rights to his estate. In 1991, following a lengthy legal struggle that involved DNA testing of Williams's known relatives, a court in Tennessee officially acknowledged Catherine Jett Williams as Hank's daughter and an heir to his estate. The emergence and development of DNA testing in the late 1980s offered a vital scientific resource to address enduring questions regarding paternity. Jet's legal team obtained DNA samples from Hank Williams Jr. and other family members to analyze alongside Jet's own genetic information. In spite of efforts to obstruct the testing by those concerned about the potential dilution of the estate, the court ruled in her favor, confirming with over 99.9% certainty that Jet was indeed Hank's biological daughter. This groundbreaking ruling not only awarded her rights to royalties and residuals, but also established a precedent for posthumous claims within entertainment estates. The acknowledgement of Jet Williams as an heir dramatically transformed the ownership dynamics of Hank Williams' publishing rights and royalties. Before 1991, the estate was primarily overseen by Hank Williams Jr. and his trustees, who held the reins on the licensing of Williams' songs for various media, including films, commercials, and reissues. Following Jet's legal triumph, the estate's revenue, stemming from album sales, public performance royalties, and licensing, was reallocated to incorporate her portion. While the precise figures remain confidential, analysts suggest that Jet's inclusion as a co-heir led to a decrease in individual shares, yet simultaneously sparked a renewed interest in Hank's catalog, ultimately enhancing overall earnings. Patsy Cline. Patsy Cline, recognized as one of the most impactful female singers in the history of country music, tragically lost her life in a plane crash on March 5, 1963, at just 30 years old. She was on her way back to Nashville after performing at a benefit concert in Kansas City when the small plane, carrying her and other artists, went down due to poor weather conditions near Camden, Tennessee. The news of her passing sent shockwaves through the music industry. At the height of her career, with chart-topping songs like Crazy, Walking After Midnight, and I Fall to Pieces, she had already transformed the landscape of country music with her exceptional vocals and ability to appeal to a broader audience. However, amidst her rising fame, Cline had overlooked a significant detail. She did not have a formal, comprehensive will established at the time of her untimely death. In the absence of a detailed will, Cline's estate automatically passed to her legal next of kin, her husband, Charlie Dick. This meant he gained the rights to her music, likeness, personal belongings, and the authority to make decisions about how her legacy would be preserved in the years ahead. At that time, Cline had been married to Dick since 1957. They shared 2 young children, Julie and Randy, and led a humble life in Nashville. Although Charlie Dick was recognized for his support of her career, the legal power he acquired after her passing granted him nearly total control over her estate without any prior direction from Patsy herself. The absence of a will was not entirely unexpected, considering Cline's youth and the abruptness of her passing. During the early 1960s, many artists, particularly women, often overlooked estate planning, typically leaving financial and legal issues to their husbands. Nevertheless, given that Cline had risen to prominence and was earning substantial income, the absence of a will represented a significant legal and ethical lapse. There were no definitive guidelines regarding the use of her music, the long-term support of her children, or the preservation of her image and legacy. This lack of planning created a void, one that would become increasingly troublesome as her fame continued to soar posthumously. Following Patsy's passing, Charlie Dick took on the role of guardian for her career and legacy. At first, he was heavily engaged in preserving her memory, working alongside record labels to launch posthumous compilations and giving the green light for her music to be featured in documentaries and tribute albums. Yet, as the years went by, certain fans, music historians, and even relatives began to challenge his choices. Detractors contended that Dick wielded excessive influence and sometimes favored financial profit over genuine representation or familial feelings. Julie and Randy were still quite young when Patsy passed away. With Charlie Dick inheriting complete control over the estate, it became his responsibility to oversee their financial future and uphold their mother's legacy. There is no documented evidence of any formal disagreements between Charlie and the children during their formative years. Uncertainties arose as they matured. Fans and onlookers frequently speculated whether Patsy would have preferred a more organized and fair distribution of her wealth, particularly in light of her increasing fame and the potential for future earnings. Due to the absence of a legal will or trust, there was no binding mechanism to guarantee that her children would receive specific percentages of her estate or royalties. Conway Twitty. Harold Lloyd Jenkins, who is more famously recognized as Conway Twitty, stands out as one of the most successful hitmakers in country music history. His remarkable career, which lasted for several decades, yielded an impressive 55 #1 singles, more than any other artist at the time of his passing. His distinctive voice and persona became emblematic of the classic storytelling that defines country music. However, his sudden death from an abdominal aneurysm in June 1993, at the age of 59, triggered one of the most conflicted and disputed inheritance battles in the annals of music history. Despite his immense success and fortune, estimated between $15 and $25 million, Twitty seemingly passed away without a valid will, a situation known as dying intestate. Family members and close associates claimed that there had been a handwritten will at one point, perhaps even multiple drafts, yet none were ever submitted to the court. Speculation arose that a will had been misplaced, overlooked, or even deliberately concealed following his passing. This lack of a will resulted in a legal void, sparking one of the most drawn-out and contentious probate battles in the realm of country music. Twitty had experienced the ups and downs of marriage 4 times. 3 of those unions were with the same woman, and he was the proud father of 4 children: Michael, Joni, Kathy, and Jimmy Jenkins. At the time of his passing, his legal spouse was D. Henry Jenkins, whom he wed in 1987. Lacking an official will, state law mandated that his estate be split between his surviving spouse and his children. Yet, disputes arose almost immediately regarding who had the rightful claim to what, and whether Twitty truly intended for Dee to inherit such a substantial part of his legacy. The Jenkins children, especially Michael and Joni, took issue with Dee's authority over their father's intellectual property, royalties, and business interests, which included the renowned Twitty City complex in Tennessee. What could have remained a private estate issue swiftly escalated into a lengthy, public, and distressing legal battle. One of the most intricate assets within the estate was Twitty City, a beloved tourist destination and family hub situated in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Established in the 1980s, it encompassed the family's residences, museums, collections of memorabilia, and gift shops. Conway envisioned Twitty City as a lasting legacy for his fans and perhaps a venture for his children to oversee. Following his passing, Twitty City emerged as a significant source of dispute. Lacking a definitive will, the property's future was cast into a state of legal uncertainty. In the end, the attraction was acquired by the Trinity Broadcasting Network in 1994, leading to its rebranding as Trinity Music City. Many fans perceived the sale as a profound loss, viewing it as a representation of the unraveling of Conway's meticulously crafted public image and family-oriented reputation. The legal battles surrounding Twitty's estate dragged on for over a decade. This case unfolded across various courtrooms, featuring disputes over property rights, song royalties, trademark usage, and the legitimacy of verbal agreements versus informal documents. At one stage, the children accused Dee of hiding crucial estate information, mismanaging finances, and denying them access to important business decisions and cherished family heirlooms. Although a portion of the estate was eventually allocated, the prolonged court drama took a significant toll on the family. The once close-knit group, who frequently joined Twitty on tours or posed for promotional photos, began to fracture in the public eye. Fans were left shocked as the country icon's legacy became marred by family disputes and lengthy probate proceedings. Twitty's financial portfolio was extensive and remarkably intricate. He possessed real estate, music rights, merchandise enterprises, and even had shares in various entertainment projects. These assets were not easily convertible to cash, and many demanded ongoing management. In the absence of a definitive plan or appointed trustee, the process of settling the estate necessitated thorough audits, asset appraisals, and discussions with record labels, performance rights organizations, and business associates. At various stages, the estate was compelled to liquidate valuable properties and rights merely to keep the legal proceedings progressing and to manage expenses. Over the years, legal fees surged into the millions, diminishing the estate's worth and leaving the heirs with significantly less than what Twitty probably envisioned for them. Although it was never officially verified, several individuals associated with Conway Twitty asserted that a handwritten will was in existence. These handwritten wills, referred to as holographic wills, hold legal validity in Tennessee as long as they are completely penned and signed by the testator. Some reports indicate that Twitty composed such a will just prior to undergoing a medical procedure, while others suggest he contemplated altering his will to benefit his children. Nevertheless, no such document was ever presented in a court of law. There were even rumors that someone within the family circle might have concealed or destroyed a version of the will that did not favor them. While none of these allegations were substantiated, the mere implication introduced additional layers of suspicion and intrigue to an already distressing legal conflict. Glen Campbell, renowned for his iconic songs such as Rhinestone Cowboy, Wichita Lineman, and Gentle on My Mind, was a monumental presence in the realm of country pop music. He was more than just a vocalist. He was an exceptional guitarist, a television personality, and an actor who seamlessly navigated various musical genres. Over his extensive career, he earned a reputation as a wholesome, family-oriented performer whose songs often conveyed themes of traditional values, love, and faith. Therefore, when Campbell passed away in August 2017 at the age of 81 after a prolonged struggle with Alzheimer's disease, many expected that his estate plan would mirror the family-first persona he had cultivated. However, the reality that unfolded surprised not only his fans, but also a significant portion of the country music community. In Glen Campbell's last will, created in 2006, years before he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2011, he intentionally chose to leave out 3 of his 8 children from receiving any inheritance from his estate. The children excluded were William Travis Campbell, Kelly Campbell, and Debbie Campbell Cloyd, all of whom are from Campbell's second marriage to Billie Jean Nunley. The will explicitly indicated that these 3 adult children would not inherit anything without providing any rationale for this choice. This exclusion quickly ignited speculation and controversy. Was it a deliberate decision stemming from family discord, or a choice made during a time of cognitive decline? To grasp the full extent of the situation, one must delve into the intricate family dynamics of Campbell. Glen Campbell experienced 4 marriages and fathered 8 children. With his first wife, Diane Kirk, he had 1 child, Debbie Campbell Cloyd. From his second marriage to Billie Jean Nunley, he welcomed 3 children, including Kelly and William Travis. His third wife, Sarah Barg, gave him 1 child. With his fourth wife, Kimberly Woolen, he had 3 children, Cal, Shannon, and Ashley, all of whom played significant roles in his life and music career, particularly during his battle with Alzheimer's and his final tours. It was these younger children, especially Ashley, who is a talented singer-songwriter herself, who were prominently featured in Campbell's later years and public appearances. In 2018, the children who felt excluded, Debbie, Kelly, and Travis, initiated a legal dispute in Davidson County Probate Court, located in Nashville, Tennessee, challenging the legitimacy of the will. They contended that Campbell was experiencing dementia when the will was created and might not have possessed the mental clarity necessary to make such a significant decision. Additionally, they expressed worries about potential undue influence exerted by other family members. At the heart of their case was not merely a financial issue, it was a matter of fairness and acknowledgement. These 3 siblings, especially Debbie, asserted that they had been actively involved in their father's life and career for many years, and they were taken aback to find themselves entirely excluded from his estate. In spite of the emotional gravity surrounding the case, the court ultimately decided to uphold Glen Campbell's will. In September 2020, Davidson County Probate Judge David Randy Kennedy determined that there was not enough evidence to demonstrate that Campbell lacked the capacity to make decisions or had been coerced. This ruling reinforced a fundamental tenet of estate law. Individuals possess the right to allocate their assets to anyone they wish, even if those choices appear harsh or lack clear justification. Furthermore, the decision highlighted the challenges involved in contesting a will unless there is compelling evidence of legal violations such as coercion, fraud, or diminished capacity. The most shocking element of this story was the stark contrast it had with Campbell's public image. His music, appearances on television, and later commitment to Christianity all painted a picture of a devoted father and a faithful family man. For numerous fans, the revelation that he had intentionally excluded 3 of his children from his will without explanation was a profound emotional shock. Public sentiment was sharply split. Some argued that the exclusion was warranted, implying that those children might have become estranged or that there were underlying family conflicts. Conversely, others believed that this omission contradicted the values of fairness and togetherness that Campbell frequently celebrated in his songs. To this day, the reason behind Glen Campbell's decision to exclude his older children remains a mystery. The will provided no clarity, and his wife, Kim Campbell, offered no further details in court. Some believe that years of strained relationships, especially between Debbie and Kim, may have impacted this choice. Debbie had openly criticized the way her father's illness was managed in his final years. She even published a memoir titled Life with My Father, Glen Campbell, where she addressed the family conflicts. While it is uncertain if these tensions directly influenced the estate planning, it certainly seems plausible. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash, famously recognized as the Man in Black, was not only a monumental presence in the realm of country music, but also a man whose personal experiences were intricately linked to his creative expression. Throughout his lifetime, he entered into matrimony twice. His initial union with Vivian Liberto resulted in the birth of 4 daughters, Roseanne, Kathy, Cindy, and Tara. Subsequently, he wed the iconic June Carter, and together they welcomed a son, John Carter Cash. Cash was frequently perceived as a dedicated family man, and his public persona embodied strong principles of faith, love, and redemption. He shared a particularly close bond with his eldest daughter, Roseanne Cash, who followed her father's legacy and emerged as a successful musician in her own right. When Johnny Cash passed away on September 12, 2003, just 4 months after June Carter's death, the details of his will left many in shock. The majority of his estate, valued at over $100 million at the time, was bequeathed entirely to his only son, John Carter Cash. In a surprising twist that took fans and insiders by surprise, none of his daughters were included as beneficiaries in his final will. This choice stirred considerable controversy, not only within the family, but throughout the music industry. Given Cash's image as a principled and family-oriented individual, the exclusion of his daughters seemed to contradict the values he had always championed. The backlash was particularly intense due to Johnny's well-documented bond with Roseanne. Over the years, she had often shared how her father influenced and supported her, and they were frequently regarded as artistic soulmates. Fans had anticipated that she, at the very least, would inherit a significant portion of his estate. The will appeared to favor John Carter, not just in terms of finances, but also as the expected steward of Cash's legacy. Many commentators interpreted this as an indication that Johnny intended for his son to have full authority over the future of his music, image, and decisions related to the estate. In the wake of the events, a variety of theories surfaced. Some speculated that June Carter, prior to her own passing, might have influenced the distribution of the estate. Others believed that Johnny aimed to avoid future legal disputes by placing the estate's control in the hands of a single trusted individual, someone he felt would respect his wishes and manage his legacy with care. There were also suggestions that his daughters had already received considerable support or gifts during his lifetime, and that the will was merely a means to formalize that balance, preventing any division of his wealth after his death. Despite the heavy emotional burden of the situation, none of the daughters challenged the will in court. They publicly exhibited a level of grace and restraint, although the disappointment was unmistakable. Roseanne Cash, in particular, refrained from discussing the issue in depth, opting instead to concentrate on her music and career. Nevertheless, this decision left behind a complex legacy, a reminder that even the most celebrated figures can leave unresolved questions regarding family, wealth, and their final intentions. So, what do you think about these country music singers and their will? Let's hear from you in the comments. Remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.